Welcome, Tommy.
What's up, Aaron?
It's so good to see your face. We were just talking for a few minutes before this started about all the things, and Tommy actually kind of in his wheelhouse of what he's good at, having that work-life balance. In just a few minutes, like at the top of the hour, is going to go scoop up his little one. So he let me know where his boundary was, and he's going to help us with some of the topics like this as we discuss in the next couple of minutes as well.
Yeah, got to be able to wear all the hats for sure, man. I'm happy to be here. I love the podcast. I know we text back and forth about it once in a while, but really, I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Very excited to have you. My friends, you're going to be, if you're a parent this week, this episode is going to be really, really valuable for you. It's going to be valuable for you as well, just for time management and thinking about maybe what some of the things that informed you when you were raised as well. Some of the stories that you might have going on in your brain about what's possible for you, you're going to find some value there as well. But in particular, if you're a parent, Tommy is a fantastic resource for helping you achieve that emotional and life and work balance while you're parenting as well. I should probably let him talk a little bit at this point. Tommy, can you introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about what your jam is right now?
Yeah, for sure. So I coach dads. I coach high performing dads. Help them kind of like you said, balance life out. And for me, if we dive into like how I got here, if you talked to me when I was in my 20s and told me about life coaching, I was a college football player. I snowboarded a ton, and I probably would have like poked fun at coaching and mindset stuff. So that has changed. And, leading up to fatherhood, I got really into yoga. Like, I think this was like when I started to shift from this football snowboarder to more mindfulness focused. So went to a yoga class to stretch because I was beating myself up on the hill and was sitting there really uncomfortable on the floor with my knees like touching my ears because my hips are so tight. And the instructor is chilling, sitting very comfortably, and reads a passage from the Bhagavad Gita. And I had never heard anything like that before, and I don't remember exactly what the passage was, but it was a moment that I remember. I was like, oh, like there's something called mindfulness, and there's something about like slowing down and that I have control of my life that really clicked for me. And that was like my mid-20s. So
yoga was your gateway drug to coaching?
Totally. It was my gateway drug. It got me in touch with my, like, out of my head and into my body a little bit, which is a lot of what I do with dudes. We don't do yoga, but so I work with dads, and I guess my story, why I was saying this was because that outside of business became a big focus of mine. I dove into yoga, went to meditation retreats, got certified. And before I had kids, there was this really nice separation of work and that kind of passion that I had and all the outdoor stuff that I like to do. Enter my daughter. So we adopted Nell, and I think everybody's story of having a kid is crazy, and ours was crazy in that like we found out about her 3 weeks before, and then she's here. And
wow, I can't even imagine. I've heard several stories like that. The emotional endurance that you must have had to have developed, especially in the moment, to like go from zero to child in 3 weeks that's crazy. Most of us have months and months and months and months to prepare. Like, I can't imagine the stress and also the joy and like so many accelerated processes for you when you're in that adoption process.
yeah, the emotions are very strong. That time was, I credit a lot of how my wife and I like communicated through that, how we showed up for Nell's birth parents, Nell's my daughter, Nell's birth parents, how we showed up for Nell, to the work I did ahead of time, right? Like the yoga, the meditation, the learning about myself, the stories that I have, and breaking those down. And um,
Let's
so,
talk a
yeah,
little bit about that. Yeah.
yeah.
Like what did you even that early on start to identify some of the your own parenting stories about maybe the way that you had been parented and start to examine those? Is that maybe where it started for you on your journey to becoming a coach specifically for parenting or
I wouldn't say that I got, I grew up with a awesome childhood. I was really grew up in a safe, loving house. Um, so more so, well, now that you're asking me, and I'm kind of thinking about this, there's, and I'm thinking about my conversations with my parents leading up to this adoption, which were like 100% on board with, loved it. And there's I think this generational thing in my story is that there's a fear basis.
hmm.
Um, and by that, I mean, like, okay, so my dad is this like south side of Chicago city dude and is such a cool guy, like the best dad ever. He's kind of got the like look out for myself, like me, my family against the world. And I think
Hmm.
that's what happens to a lot of us. Like and so my grandpa, he was an orphan. He had a very crazy childhood. And he also, throughout his life, had a lot of this like protect me, protect the family, don't really care about the greater good. Not that neither of them care about the greater good. Like if you met either of them face to face, they were like loved everybody. But so this fear that like the outside world could hurt us. And through this adoption process, you got to let go of that because
Mm.
there's a lot of things you can't control, like the birth parents and where the kid's born and the timing and all that. And um, so I don't know, some of these old stories, these generational stories that are embedded in us can get a little um, confusing on like everyone's personal level. So I'm saying this
Hmm.
and I'm like, well, what the heck are the listeners thinking right now? And whatever they're thinking, like it makes sense in my head, which is, um, that's what our brains do. They're kind of crazy like that.
But
So
I think that I do think that that is pretty common, at least for a lot of us. Like I can absolutely see how I care about people externally from my, traditional nuclear family. If you're looking at it, from a kernel, from starting from there, but we do. I mean, I think that's pretty normal for us to go like, I need to take care of these people literally under my roof right now, and then we will address what's happening on beyond the boundaries of these walls as a parent, right?
yeah, yeah. And yeah, so that, yeah. And I guess there is that innate like caring for your immediate family, and that's powerful and it can be destructive, I think, also when
Oh, tell me more about that. Yeah.
I think we put up walls to like a lot of the things that we, whether it's um well, let's just say like this is what's coming up. Like I was working with this guy that wanted to protect his family. And I think this happens with a lot of us. There was a relationship with him and his mom that got like he was trying to protect his family from his mom, right? Like his mom and his wife don't really get along. I don't know if this is like a constant thing with in-laws and sister
I was going to
or
say, I'm pretty sure that
daughter-in-laws. And
that theme plays out on
I've
multiple levels.
I've figured that out over my years and years of coaching guys. So that that protectiveness that we put over our family under our roof, like you said, can be this wall against like our mom, right? Your
Mm.
mom who you want to love and you do love on the inside, and you probably say, I love her, I love you, but we can get super triggered by our mom really easily.
Oh, they know
And
all of our buttons, right? They do.
yeah,
They know every single one of our buttons. Our parents do.
do you
Yeah.
think they mean to press them though?
I don't think they do. I think it's that, at least through the stories that I've examined for myself, it usually has something to do with, it's all me, right? It's all my thinking. They could be doing something that my spouse is just like, what? She just said this. But I'm like, yeah, she said that, but what she's referring to is blah, blah, blah. And I bet she also means this and blah, blah, blah. And my wife will look at me like, she just said pass the salt.
Yeah.
And conversely, when my wife's mom is over, some of that same stuff plays out. Like she'll say something that to me seems completely innocuous, but there are patterns that were set up in the childhood where they might make my partner feel like she's being made to feel like a child again, or different
Totally.
things like that. And so I don't think they do it on purpose. I'm
No.
sure in some cases somebody might be trying to needle you, but I think that's less than we think. I
Yeah,
think it's
like
us and it's our thoughts, right?
100%. And that they're hard to uncover sometimes what those thoughts are. And I think this is like interesting because it gets more into like the emotional level, that a text message will come from my mom and it'll say something like, hey, say hey to Nell for me. And I'll be like, what the? And totally be triggered. And the text message just has like 3 words on it. And I'll come up with all these stories about whatever. But the thing I notice first aren't the stories. It's that like defense in my body that like gets super tight and tense, and my jaw gets angry. And I think we react to that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think from that like tenseness, we shut down and we don't respond for a long time, or we shoot off a text that we regret later.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that trigger could be like a great signal to be like, what's going on? What am I telling myself about these 5 words that my mom just sent me?
And is that a tool that you use with your clients as well? Is kind of that, it sounds like, being able to be a little bit curious about things instead of, or at least noticing patterns where you get defensive and things like that. Does that, is
Yeah,
that something that you work on with people?
it is. I think the for a lot of the guys that I work with, and your listeners are male and female, so I think this happens with females too, moms too, is that we are disconnected from our body, right? We live a
Mm,
lot in our head. We live a lot of all of our thoughts, and we're very good at thinking and being analytical. And when it comes to our emotions, we're a little like out of touch, maybe. And I think
whatever
that,
happens, happens. And like, we're not in control of it almost.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, how do you feel? Good. How do you feel? Not so good.
Those are some standard dude answers for anyone
Yeah.
listening. Those are standard dude answers. They come with the instruction manual.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so some of my work is breaking that or connecting that a little bit more. Like the stories that we tell in our head influence the emotions that we feel in our body, and the emotions in our body influence what we think about ourselves in our head. So,
What are some of the things that you do to create that awareness when you're working with a client? Like, are there some things that you guide them through to start to be aware of those sorts of things and those connections and where they're happening?
yeah, you know, questions, right? Really asking questions that are curious, things that they might not have thought of before. I mean, I'll hop on a call. I think a lot of dudes think that they need to solve problems themselves. And
Mm.
I know I do. Like, oh, there's
Mm.
something going on. I should be able to figure this out. And
Otherwise I'm weak.
yeah, otherwise I'm weak. Otherwise I'm not doing a good job. And so by the time like I'm talking to them, not always, some dudes are a little ahead of it, but by the time I'm talking to them, they're having this like first conversation where they're talking about fights that they've had with their wives and blowups that
Mm.
they've had at their kids and how they shut down and how it's not like so just talking about that stuff, if it's only lived up in our heads and we haven't like given it space, just talking about it, just airing it out makes such a difference in how we feel emotionally.
Mm.
This is why journaling is so powerful. When we write our thoughts down, we get them out of our head and we're able to think more clearly. When we talk about some of the struggles that we have, it clears our energy to be able to kind of talk our truth, say what's really happening. And for my one-on-one coaching, it looks different for everybody. Meet people where they're at. In a group program, we go slowly with different modalities to practice. And I mean, that can go anywhere from practicing some qigong to somatic meditations to breath work, visualizations, all those different ways to get out of our head and more, I guess I've heard the analogy of if we're in an elevator, if our attention is in an elevator, most of the time the elevator's in the top floor
Okay.
in the brain, hanging out up here. And those different tools, techniques, tactics, just let the elevator start going down. Just bring
Oh,
the
I love
elevator
this analogy. This is
down.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Out of the head into the body.
I like the the way you said that too about letting it come down. It's almost like we're holding it in the top position a lot, right? Like it needs to stay on the top floor. Going into my body is going to be scary. I'm feeling stuff down here and I don't have words for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we shoot right back. And then that elevator's like just shoots right back up.
It's a scared elevator. It likes to go back to the
Yeah.
top floor as soon as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's totally normal. There's resistance. And go slow with it. But it's powerful. I think a
Is
lot of guys go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I wondered, like, do you encourage people to hang out maybe a little bit more on those lower floors just to, does, I guess my question is more towards, does it help to be more aware of that and like in the moment sink to those lower floors, to use your analogy, and experience and feel and process some of that emotion rather than, because it's happening whether we lower the elevator or not, right? It's still happening. And for guys, especially, the stereotype for us is always like, we let it build up for years and years and years and years. And then there's like a cathartic break. And
Yeah.
then everyone's like, what the hell's going on? Why are you overreacting? And if we had just allowed the elevator to sink to some of those lower floors in the moment and process it, it would have taken a lot shorter amount of time and it wouldn't have built up. So that's why I'm loving your analogy.
Yeah. The shorter amount of time is huge. Like I was working with this one dude that, we started working together just because he was raising his voice around his kids a lot more than he wanted to. And we worked on some of this stuff, stories, emotions. Like he was fighting the anger. Every time he felt angry, he was like, no, 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 no. Can't get angry. Anger is bad. Shut it down, push it down, push it down. And then, like you said, it would come out in unhealthy ways. So if we're just talking about anger, changing our relationship with anger, that anger is not wrong. We just want to direct it in a healthy, safe manner.
I love that. It's not wrong, because I definitely think like if I ever get angry at the kids or anything like that, that it's just automatically wrong.
Yeah.
That like me having anger or feeling anger is somehow I'm wrong, like something wrong with me. So that's interesting way to
Me
put that.
too.
Yeah.
Me too. And I think that's big for guys. Like I'll finish the story about this guy, but like I a lot of the time still, but what I've learned about myself is I'll cover anger up with humor. I'll try to
Hmm.
like make jokes out of things and make light of a situation. And
Guilty.
and other people shut down. And there's other coping mechanisms, but with when we start to change our relationship with anger, if we're just talking anger here, and we allow it because anger is not a bad thing. When we get triggered and super tense and everything, we already start to have a different relationship with it. We already start allowing it a little bit more. And so the program that I am running right now is a 4-month one with this dude. So it was so cool. By the end, what he said, and you said this like you said something about it shortens the span of like when we have this like huge like
Yeah,
cathartic
because
breakout.
it's not like that snowball that's rolling down the hill. Like you can let it
Yeah.
out in smaller increments while it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he used very similar terminology about like the changes he noticed was that like when him and his wife would get into an argument, like he was able to repair more quickly. He was able to
Mm.
like maybe he would like yell a little bit, but he was able to catch himself and be like, that's just anger moving. Like, of course it's there. Anger is okay. And and so with his kids, the same thing. Like when like this goes into something different, but if we're not comfortable with our emotions, if we can't hold space for our emotions, anger, sadness, whatever, we're going to have a really hard time allowing our kids to have their emotions.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good because they learn so much more by watching us and how we process things,
Yeah. And
right?
exactly. And so when like my daughter flips out, if I haven't like been taking care of myself, I can get super triggered right back at her.
Mm.
But if I've been like working on my relationship with anger and know that anger is okay and know that like it's just really hot, powerful energy that likes to move, when I watch her throw a huge tantrum, I can allow her to do that a lot easier and not think that there's something wrong or that she should needs to change or she needs to stop. I'm not going to tell her that anger is bad. I'm going to just be like, oh, that's anger moving around. She's a kid. Sometimes I'm angry too.
That's a fantastic point. I love that we can take care of ourselves, but also be modeling it that we should do this work for ourselves because of the fact for those of us that have kids, they are absolutely watching what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
And that pushing it down is teaching them to push it down too. Yeah.
And I think we know it, right? It's like it's not what you say, it's what you do, right? The kids aren't going to like follow what you've told them. They're going to follow how you behave. And I it's a tough job to be a dad. I mean, we have so much going on. Parents, right? Back to the parents. There's so much going on, especially you're running your own business or you're high level at at a
Hmm.
company. When you're have all these responsibilities, then you come home and you want to show up as a level-headed, fun, strong parent. One of the things that I see a lot is that like people say, I've used up all my patience at work, that when I'm
Oh yeah.
home, I don't have enough energy left. I'm all exhausted.
Mm.
And so taking care of ourselves, back to what you said, I've heard people say like, you're on an airplane and they're like, put your mask on first before you help your child out.
Exactly. Yes, of
It's
course.
like take care of yourself first before you can take care of your kids, your partners, your job. And yeah, so, oh man, I could go on about a few different ways, but
No, but
this,
I love what you just said though, especially that putting the mask on and like so that we are like let's say we're a business leader or we're leading a team or we're a parent that's trying to maintain or set up healthy structures for that work life balance. What are some practices or tools that you could point us towards or that we should explore that help us with this, like you said with the elevator, this being more connected to what's going on in our head, what's how it connects to our body, and letting it come out as it's happening in a healthier way rather than letting it build up until it work life balance is all of a sudden a problem or different things have become a problem, quote unquote, and that we start to feel bad about it, guilty about it, which just makes it worse. Are there any
yeah.
tools or techniques that you like to point people towards, or that you might recommend that someone who's just starting this journey of awareness could use?
Yeah. So one that comes to mind right away is on our website. There's a free resource. It's called Work Mode to Dad Mode, but this could totally be for work mode to mom mode. And it's a breathing technique,
Oh, I
and
love this.
it's meant to be used. If you work at your home office before you shut down your laptop and you go with the rest of the family, or if you're leaving the office for the day before you walk into the house. And the reason I do this breathing exercise, I did it first, and now I'm giving it to everybody else, and I've done it with my clients and seen a benefit, is because the energy that we bring to work isn't the same kind of energy that we want to bring home. It's like, and maybe if we're really, really like aware and we can do this, we can love all the time. Like we can really break down and open our heart at work and at home. But for a lot of us, that's really hard. And I know it is for me. So after a long day of work, making this like deliberate, I'm leaving work and I'm entering the house. This breath work, it's box breathing. So it's pretty much 4 rounds of a certain count of breathing in and out, and you hold your breath a little bit. And at
I've
the
heard of
end,
this. Isn't this something they teach Navy SEALs
yeah,
as
yeah,
well? Box
yeah,
breathing. Yes, I've heard of this. Okay, very cool. So anyone that thought that we were getting too woo-woo right now and was like, this is, I don't know about this. Navy SEALs do this. So
totally.
you're not too cool for school right now, dude. Like if they find it valuable, maybe you can too.
Yeah. Yeah, and the gist of it is like science is here, right? It's not just like sitting a Buddhist monk sitting on the side of a mountain. Science shows that like we're usually in this very fight or flight sympathetic nervous system going and going, and breathing, using your breath intentionally, counting your breaths can slow that down and set you into a totally different nervous system, your same, I guess the same nervous system, but your parasympathetic nervous system, rest,
Mm.
digest. And that from that place, we are less reactive. We can think more logically. We get to show up more how we want to. So work mode, dad mode, box breathing, and it ends with a couple intentional stories to tell yourself. Like, I've arrived, work is over, work is over, I've arrived, something like that. Sounds cheesy again, right? Sounds a little woo, but the stories that we tell ourselves are gonna affect how we show up. So that's one tool that I like to
That's an
use.
amazing tool. Are you kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
do you have that link? In fact, we'll put that in the show notes so that people can check that out on your website. I
Yeah,
think that'll
for
be
sure.
really helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah, and there's I'm on Instagram and I post a lot of different tips up there as well. So
Yeah, where can we find? Where are the different places that someone that's really digging kind of what they're hearing from you right now that can find you? We heard about the website already. You've got an Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
it's Tommy We Embark. Tommy We Embark. And Yeah, I'm sure you'll put the email or the website in the show notes. So those are the best two
Perfect.
places to reach me, find me. Um,
And
yeah.
what kind of programs do you have running right now for dads specifically?
Yeah, right now, one-on-one coaching. It's a 4-month program, and we really hit all of the areas of life, right? From you get there, and then by the end, we've worked on yourself, where you want to go, taking care of yourself, right? Putting that mask on first before your family. We've worked on how to show up for your kids, be more present with them, how to communicate better with your wife, how to communicate better with people at work. And overall, like just this going from like this overwhelmed, constant stress to more in control of your life and how you want to live it and like being that dad you want to be.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, we'll definitely put those links in for people so that they can find you and follow you there. But thank you for giving us the tool that you have and letting us know kind of what you're about, the kind of stuff, this work stuff that needs to happen. I know that this is going to be obviously super helpful to parents, but and especially fathers, but also just in general, the way that you can apply being more present as far as the thoughts and the stories that you're telling yourself in your brain and connecting that with what you're feeling is going to help you be a better leader as well, especially since much like the relationships that you can have as well with subordinates and team members, if you're a leader, like they are watching what you're doing and how you're reacting. And if you're not aware of that, it can be to the detriment of your business and your growth and attrition as far as people not being happy in their role and leaving. And then all of a sudden you're wondering why. And it's because maybe you're creating this atmosphere where if you're not connected to these things and not mindful of the way that you're showing up, it's maybe not the most attractive thing to have the best team surrounding you.
Yeah. That work, your EQ, your emotional
Mm,
intelligence. That when I worked for a Fortune 1000 company for a long time, and when that book came out, and that company had an awesome leadership development program, and we were reading that, and I think that's a huge step into it. That's kind of really focused in more on like the corporate world and your self awareness. Um, because yeah, you have to be aware of your own stories, the shit you have going on in your life, what you're bringing to the table emotionally, and if you just take care of that, don't worry about other people, like other people will see it and other people will, I don't know, I guess when you have your shit together and you can hang out in your emotions a little more comfortably, people feel safer with you, and
they
people
do, don't
are,
they? Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
okay for me to not always just have the mask on of the smiling employee if I know that I'm seeing it modeled for me that it's acceptable to like have the ups and downs of being human.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and owning up
absolutely.
to it and not blaming other people for it and not,
Oh,
you
so
know,
true.
playing the victim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, I got to check myself on doing it like all the time too, right? It's not,
It's a constant process, right? It's not
yeah,
like you learn about this stuff and then it doesn't happen anymore. It's just
no.
that you're aware of it and you can continually to work on it. Kind of like your yoga practice you were talking about before. Like there's a reason they call it a practice.
Oh,
You're never done. You're practicing, you're evolving, you're working on it all the time. But being aware of it is the first step.
yeah. And I love that practice word because you practice on the yoga mat, you practice on the meditation mat, you practice with your coach in sessions or in a group setting for the game, right? And the
Mm,
game is in the boardroom. The game is in that sales pitch. The game is when your kid flips out at home or
so
it's
true.
time to have a hard conversation. Like that's game time. And you practice off the court for game time. I think that's I love that they call like meditation a practice and yoga a practice because that's what I think you're practicing for. Or you're practicing yoga so you can go throw yourself down a mountain on your snowboard and your body won't totally wreck.
That as well. Maybe it's
Yeah,
yes
yeah.
and. That's
Yes,
perfect.
and
Well, I
yeah,
think this is the perfect place for us to wrap this up. Thank you so much for spending time with us and kind of giving us a view into how we can start to look at this in our own lives and maybe track where that elevator might be stuck at the top and maybe give it permission to go to some of the lower floors on a more regular basis.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, man. It was really, really cool to be here and talking to you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much.
All right. See ya.